Hello, welcome to our show. We are Business Love with Ryan. I am Ryan. Here we focus on what it takes to make your ideas happen and the steps you can follow to make it just a little bit easier. Subscribe to our podcast to join the ongoing conversation about all things startup business related. Find even more content on our YouTube channel, Ryan's Business Class. See the link in our description of this episode. So glad to have you here. Maybe we can learn something together. Well, okay. Hello, friends. Welcome to our first ever Business Love with Ryan podcast. It is March 8th, 2020. Like I said, this is our first ever podcast episode, and I'm very excited about it. The real purpose of it is to discuss what it means to start different kinds of businesses. We really want to focus on the education, the actual steps involved, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of getting through whatever idea you might have, understanding how to initially set it up, and then the important initial steps, and then how those steps prioritize over the life cycle of the business. And it all really starts with having your own idea. So we encourage everyone listening to cherish your ideas, to respect them, to take them seriously, and to believe that your ideas are just as valid as anybody else's. Everyone has had $1 million idea in their life, and I think that we just want to be here as a support, as an entertaining but also supportive community that really helps people get stuff done. We open our first ever podcast anticipating the end of mankind, actually, due to coronavirus. The business community is definitely on its heels right now about it. Very nervous. The obvious concern is that there's going to be a drop in business around the world. Even more important and probably more likely, actually, is a disruption of supply chains. And then a curtailment of travel and canceled meetings, conferences, festivals, concerts. It's not practical right now. And all of that is money that is just being lost. Entertainment that's not being provided. You could say on one level the consumer is saving money by not doing these things. And you could say, conferences can be held on webcam so business can move forward. But it changes things. It changes expectations. Entire industries are now going to be affected. Hotel industries, conference halls, airlines, taxis, anything having to do with catering to the business conference community or the vacation community or the travel for any reason, really. You just don't want to be in an airplane right now. Sequestered with 200 other people who one of them is sick. By the end of the flight, all of them are sick. So Sequoia Capital, which is a leading venture capital firm in the last 50 years, storied, historic, everybody knows who they are, everyone respects them. They issued a statement yesterday about coronavirus, particularly as it relates to the businesses that are underneath their venture capital umbrella. They addressed a letter to the founders of their subsidiary companies, and they said, coronavirus is what they call a black swan event of 2020. It's going to affect everything. It's going to frame the discussion about business this year, probably next year. It'll probably be several quarters before things start to get figured out, before initial medicines start to hit the market. Before we have an idea of how it's actually going to change our life in the long term or moving forward. And they really encouraged their founders to question assumptions that they had. Do you have enough cash to get you through the next year? Let's assume that sales really fall off. Do you have enough cash to get you through the time period? You need a runway for that. And then, do your fundraising now. If you're going to raise funding for a business, if you're going to, plan some sort of capital expenditure or hire a new workforce or open a new facility, if you're going to try to get an extended line of credit or try to bulk purchase supplies. Start raising funds for that now if it's needed from investors or lenders. I think a legitimate way of framing the fundraising argument is to say bulk purchases of raw materials. In a way, it's an attempt to save money in the same way that raising money addresses the same problem or the same needs. You want to forecast your sales, and you have to make some hypothesis about how it's going to be affected by these events that are happening, these sicknesses that are going around the world. You, as a business founder, need to start deciding what you think is going to happen and setting up your processes and your enterprise to withstand a downturn or maybe pivot into a more lucrative area. Later on in this podcast, this episode, we're going to talk about some industries that might really benefit from coronavirus, from the new medical social climate that we have. But before we get into that, let me give you one really good quote from Sequoia letter that came out. It said, having weathered every business downturn for nearly 50 years, we've learned an important lesson. Nobody ever regrets taking fast and decisive actions or making adjustments to changing circumstances. In downturns, revenue and cash levels always fall faster than expenses. So, your expenses are going to stay the same. So a few things might get more expensive, especially in the short term, like your food expenses. I went to the supermarket yesterday, and I found that, for instance, on cleaning supplies, there was no sales. There was almost nothing on sale, and that's because there's just a higher demand right now. In some ways, business mirrors biology. Darwin surmised those who are not the strongest or intelligent survive, but the most adaptable to change. So, you be flexible. And the prescription for this is just to be clinically realistic about what's happening. In an academic sense or in a scientific observation sense, what is happening around you? Once you identify that with a clear head, with a non-emotional mind, then you actively and decisively take action to get away from the problem. It's occurred to me in the last few weeks that wouldn't it be nice to get away from people in general? Let's go to the forest. Let's find a campsite for the next couple of months just to weather out this problem. Let's get away from people to any degree possible. In some level, it seems like it's being contained, but then it opens up in a new place, and it's like we just can't get to the bottom of it.